Welcome to Arts 130, CNMS 115, 2D Design. My name is Michael Lewis. I will be your instructor for the semester. Each week I will be providing you with a lecture which covers the material which was assigned in your readings. You are welcome to watch the videos, read the chapter, or both, whatever works best for your style of learning. I've been careful to include the vocabulary terms from each quiz, so you shouldn't be missing out on anything important. So without further ado, let's launch into our first lesson, the creative process. To begin our lesson on the creative process, it is a good idea to visit the term aesthetics. Aesthetics is a term referring to people's idea of beauty. Obviously, people's ideas of beauty are going to vary from culture to culture, from areas of the world to different areas of the world, from person to person, even within a culture. I like to think of fashion as a good way to think about aesthetics. So in the early 90s, when I was young and impressionable, grunge was all the rage. And so people were wearing ratty t-shirts with flannel shirts tied around their waists and jeans that had holes in the knees. Now, in 2020, when you look around, you can see some folks wearing jeans with holes at the knees, but not so many flannel shirts tied around the waist. Things change. So aesthetics, the idea of what's beautiful or what looks good changes. And just like if we're to go to Africa or East Asia, it's going to change. Now, aestheticians are people who study aesthetics. So questions they might ask are, what is a work of art? How do we determine what is a work of art? Who makes that decision? What is beautiful? What gets held to this higher level? Vernacular. Vernacular refers to the specific styles of the people within a locale or time period. So we could say that somebody that was of a particular fashion group that was residing around a particular area, that was their vernacular. Or, the abstract expressionists in New York City during the 50s had their own vernacular in which they communicated. It's their own style or way of expressing themselves. Form and content. So form and content are really two of the biggest terms that you are going to approach in this semester worth of work. So form refers to everything that an artwork is made up of. So if it's a pencil drawing, if it's a charcoal drawing, if it's acrylic paint or oil paint, if the colors are all blue, if the brush strokes are really jagged and aggressive, words that describe what the thing is. Is it a sculpture? Is it made out of steel? Is it a painting on canvas or paper? That kind of thing. Content, on the other hand, refers to what the work is about. So, what message are they using these forms to communicate? So by having a very rigid thing, what is that saying? So now we have here a piece of design. It's a very formal design. It's made to achieve a function. So we call this a shuttlecock or a birdie, and it has been made to be aerodynamically sound. It can be hit with a racket. It goes fairly fast. This is an object which has a definite use. It doesn't have so much content. It's not delivering any message per se. Now, we flip that on its head a little bit. We take the birdie and we blow it out of proportion. Now it's a sculpture in a park, right? We can walk under this. We can experience this around us. Something that's usually much smaller than us is now much larger than us. So now it becomes more about content. What does it say for this object to suddenly be so much bigger than us, wherein usually it's a very small object? Here we have a drawing of a person, a very rudimentary child's drawing of a person. Here we have a very rudimentary drawing of a person. However, it's done by a trained artist. This is a Jean-Michel Basquiat piece. He is choosing to communicate utilizing a child's aesthetic. That's a very different statement than only being able to communicate with the child's aesthetic. So when we look at this piece, we have to ask ourselves what the artist is trying to say by utilizing this other perspective. Here we have a bucolic landscape, the happy sun coming up over the top of two hills. We have our beautiful triangle-tailed fish floating down a stream. Now we have a Philip Guston painting, which I may add is probably, I don't know the exact size of this piece, but most of Philip Guston's pieces were like 6 by 8 feet. So we're talking probably a pretty big painting here. His work was done in oil. Usually kind of had this sheen to it. It almost looked like a dessert or something. Like this thing in the middle kind of looks like a layer cake. These trees look like they could be ice pops or something. But they're very childlike. They're not really that different than the child's drawing on the previous slide. However, the artist is utilizing this style to say something else. He's delivering some other form of content. He's using a style which is reminiscent of a children's style or a children's vernacular to get at something else, to drive at some other topic. Okay, pentimenti. When somebody creates a drawing, let's say you start with a really loose pen drawing, right? And you slowly starting to tighten it up and tighten it up and tighten it up. And then you sort of start to work into details and you end up with this detailed drawing, but you can still see the lines that were the finding of the form. That's pentimenti. Those lines that are from that previous layer that are kind of sketching things out, that is referred to as pentimenti. Okay, now let's talk about the creative process. The book discusses the creative process in 3 separate steps: looking, thinking, and doing. So in the looking process, we must establish what it is that what we're making. So let's say we're doing a website for our grandmother's flower business. We might go online and check out different flower companies and learn the vernacular of different flower companies. You know, like we don't want people going online and seeing grandma's website and suddenly thinking, you know, she's a pipe fitter or something because we used the wrong type of imagery. You know, what type of colors do people use? What type of do they do hand-drawn things, or is it kind of a clean design sort of approach? So once we determine kind of what it is that we need to produce to be kind of within that same line of work, then we go to the thinking stage. We sketch, we brainstorm, we work out our ideas and drawings. Maybe we make a mock-up on the computer or something. But the idea is to, now that we know what it is we're trying to make, we're going to work through different iterations of sketches, of ideas that arrive at that thing that we're trying to make. Once we have that sort of on lockdown, we then go to the doing process and we go into our final and we start to create this thing, whatever it may be. And as we're creating it, we're looking at it and we're constantly assessing it, right? And we're thinking, you know, is this doing what the other projects that I looked at were doing? Is this achieving what I thought it would be in the sketches? And, you know, if it's not doing that, then we need to to loop back around. We go back to the looking, we go back to the thinking. So that's the creative process in 3 separate steps. Now, a critique, generally speaking, we see critiques in art school. So we produce our work, and then people will provide feedback on it, and generally help each other determine what they did that was very strong and what they did which wasn't as strong, how they can approach their work in such a way that they can become better artists, better communicators of their ideas. Additionally, critique is kind of like that assessment stage that you're doing while you're doing the doing process, in that you're constantly kind of talking to yourself like, is this the thing that I'm trying to make? Is this the thing that I sketched out? So it's that critical eye when you're looking at your work, and the more you can kind of detach yourself from the work that you're making, the more you can think of it as something separate from your own like blood and tears, the more you can look at it objectively and really judge what you've done well and what isn't doing as well. Okay, so here we have finally arrived at our first assignment. So your first assignment is to create a self-portrait, but I don't want you to in any way draw or recreate your own image. You're probably wondering if I'm nuts at this point, and that's fine. But you may use symbols, colors, illustrations, cutouts, collage, whatever for us to get an idea of you. But I just don't want you to look in a mirror and draw yourself or paint yourself, okay? Or take a photograph of yourself. So things to think about while you're trying to achieve this project. Are you a colorful person? Mellow, contemplative? What is if you could describe yourself in a color or a shape, what might that be? What sort of imagery or symbols might communicate this about you? So you're welcome to utilize any magazines, photographs, junk mail, whatever, box tops. The world is your oyster. Originally, we had said that this piece should be about 9 by 11, but honestly, times have been kind of crazy, so just whatever you want to do it on. If you want to make a 16 by 20 piece, by all means, go for it. That's fine. It's due next week, though, so just keep that in mind. Here are a few examples of pieces that have been done for me in the past. Mind you, the assignment is kind of changed a little bit in nature. It used to be kind of phrased as a mind map, which it no longer is that. So if you see things that look mappy, that's why. But here's a piece that was a collage, very much a piece that is not using any imagery that looks like the person. Nothing. It's all metaphor. So I really enjoyed this piece. I thought it was great. This fellow did a piece entirely based on video gaming, and so kind of worked his interests into different sort of computery looking graphics, and tried to make it look like a selection board, like on a Mario Kart or something. This piece gets a little bit too busy for me. There's some things that are really great in it, but there's not really this like cohesive whole that I'm really looking for you to attain. But I do enjoy how many things this young woman tried to communicate. Some of her stuff is really done well. I like her text. It's probably the best of anything on here. So she's really playing with her lettering, and that's fun. And then here's a piece which kind of gives that whole less is more sort of idea. I thought this was a really, really well done piece. And it's really all about this drawing of the skeleton. She wanted to draw a skeleton. Sorry, I'm trying to fit Jack Skellington into my lecture, and there's no need for that. Yeah, so then she was like, well, I haven't done anything about me, so I'm going to put in these word bubbles, this last gasp. But I thought it came out really well. So now that we've gone through a couple of examples, we're talking about the creative process. You're suddenly in an art class. Maybe some of you feel comfortable with it. Maybe some of you are just kind of dreading it. The class is for everybody. It's fine. I totally understand if you're not 100% excited about being in an art class. It happens. So here we have kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of approach to the creative process. So, you start off with, this is the best idea ever, to this will be fun, to, slowly getting less and less excited about the project, to the middle where you're just kind of like, and then if you're lucky, you kind of come out on the other side and you start to feel a little bit better about it and a little bit better about it. And usually you get kind of to this point where you're like, this has been such a slog. And then, you kind of look at it and you're like, hey, that's pretty cool. I made that and that's cool. So, just stick with it. If it's something that you want to do, just stick with it. Okay. That's the best thing that I can tell you. And here, this is just a still from the Ira Glass video, which is in your first week's lesson. I would love for all of you to watch that. It is a great video, and it kind of just really drives home the point that everybody's in the process of learning. Everybody is learning how to do this, and there's very few people that are like that child prodigy, like a Mozart of some kind. We almost all have to make some really garbagey stuff before we ever make anything that we're happy about. So this video, I hope, will make you feel better about it. It's by Ira Glass, who's the main producer for This American Life on NPR. So anyway, this is the conclusion of the first week's lecture. Please, by all means, send me questions if you have questions about your assignment or your work or how we're doing things, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.